Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our fourth and final coffee break. If you were able to join us over the past few weeks, you probably remember our speakers, but for those of you who were not able to join, and this might be your first one, I am Megan Reed, VP of Marketing at NetGain Technologies. And joining me today is again Scott Logan, Director of Security at NetGain, and Tim Smoot, Senior Systems Engineer at Arctic Wolf Networks. Gentlemen, appreciate you joining us again today.
Thank you, Megan. Glad to be here.
Glad to be here. Thanks.
Yes. So today we're going to take a deeper dive into managed cloud monitoring. And like we have before, we want to start and kick it off with our first polling question. So we want to know today, where does your organization stand in regard to cloud and security? Are you currently evaluating cloud options? Are you currently in the transition phase of moving to the cloud? Have you already completed your cloud implementation, if that's the route your organization is going? And are you interested in looking at cloud-specific security options? And Tim, while we give everybody time to respond, can you jump in quickly to just what is managed cloud monitoring?
Sure. I think probably the first thing I would say would be there's a lot of misconception about what the cloud actually brings to the table with respect to security requirements and or risks. I think one of the biggest things that I like to bring back to the forefront of folks' minds is the fact that the truth is that there is no cloud. It's just somebody else's computer, right? So when we look at it in that context, really what we kind of have to do is embrace the thought process that our our security posture extends to all portions of our business, whether that be the stuff that's still on-prem, the folks that are working remotely now with the COVID scenario, as well as those cloud implementations that we've put into place. So we have to change the way we implement that security and a few of the things that we have to look at, but we shouldn't be looking at them any differently than we did when they were all in-house and standalone.
Yeah. Anything you want to add to that, Scott, before I close the poll?
No, I think Tim's spot on. I mean, whether you're picking up your infrastructure and transition up to the cloud, you're deploying an IaaS solution, or whether you're just using a particular service in the cloud, like Office 365 or something like that. SaaS solution, there's still a necessity of security at that level. So all you're doing is moving it, like Tim said, you're taking it to another computer. The security needs to follow.
Right. Okay, perfect. Well, let's close this poll and I'll share the results with everybody. So it looks like about 63% are evaluating cloud options and 13% on each of the others. Everybody's kind of fallen a little bit within each. So
that's pretty interesting, actually. And the truth is that all points of those cloud journeys are great times to evaluate the security aspects of the cloud. And in truth, when we're looking at the cloud and some of the things that it brings to the table, the flexibility, the ease of use, the rapid implementation, all of those things are great features for us to be able to leverage as a business. However, at the same time, when we look at those three things, flexibility, features, and rapid implementation, we actually introduce some very interesting security issues. And what that means is kind of like the old saying about the difference between Macs and Windows, right? Everybody looks at Macintosh or Apple as the most secure platform with respect to the operating system, and they consequently look at Windows as the least secure. And the truth is first of all, they're probably mostly correct, but secondarily, one of the reasons why Windows is inherently insecure isn't because it's a bad operating system, it's because it's much more open. So when we think about that openness, which includes that versatility and that ease of use and that rapid deployment capability, then we have to take that security side of that implementation as our own ownership. So when we look at things like Amazon for infrastructure as a service, there's default settings that make it easy to get that implemented and rapidly brought to bear for use for the business. But there's also some very critical configuration settings as you get started, as well as you go on with your implementation. And looking at that security as a dynamic piece of your overall implementation is critical. So having the eyes that look at it on a regular basis, as well as those that are intelligent about what those kind of security challenges with respect to those infrastructure as a service, software as a service, and security as a service solutions bring, is very much something that it gets kind of brushed aside because of the fact that those easy things or those very appealing aspects of the cloud journey kind of overrun them and very quickly get pushed out of our mind.
Yeah, I totally agree, Tim. I'm really kind of excited in that polling question that a majority of the responses had to do with evaluating the cloud, because I think that's so important. You don't just throw something up into something and expect it to be secure. It doesn't work that way. And if you're not putting eyes to that infrastructure, if you're not understanding what is happening in the cloud, then you're blind to an enormous area of threat and enormous area of sensitivity to your information. It is extremely important in your evaluation process to understand exactly how will I know what's happening with my data if it's stored at your location, if it's stored up in the cloud. How do I know what's infecting my systems or has access to my systems? That type of understanding is a necessity as you make this transition.
No doubt about it. And when we think about managed cloud monitoring, I think the assumption would be that it's a separate component or something different with respect to your security posture. And the truth is that managed cloud monitoring is an integral part of an MDR, a managed detection and response deployment, and to a certain extent, a managed risk deployment as well. So the reality of our previous coffee breaks and taking all of the information that we brought to bear within those coffee breaks and applying that to the overall cloud posture and journey is certainly the most applicable way to look at that cloud implementation or that ongoing cloud utilization aspect. Now, the other thing that I would add to that is the fact that anytime you implement a cloud component, you're kind of spreading out your visibility as well as your resources. And when you do that, sometimes you miss things that you wouldn't miss typically. And when we think about those cloud implementations, they, as we spoke before, they add a little bit more complexity to that visibility because some folks have the impression or the understanding that those cloud providers implement security for you. And the truth is they secure their own stuff. They definitely secure, their side of the infrastructure picture or their side of the software, and they do so very, very well. But they don't secure your implementation or the portion of it that you purchased. That's still your responsibility. So that's a little bit complicated when you think about it.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. I mean, the whole point of once you make that transition to the cloud, the amount of expertise of knowing what is happening in the cloud becomes very required. And a lot of the IT personnel or the people that manage perimeter type of systems, anything within your on-premise infrastructure, that's probably well defined and well secured. But as you now transition to the cloud, that requires a different level of expertise. That requires security professionals that know exactly how things work within the cloud so that they can bring that understanding to your IT team so they can be responsive. That level of security is just not present in a lot of organizations and requires certain security professionals to deliver that for them.
You couldn't have said it better. At the end of the day, the truth is Arctic Wolf onboards about 220 to 250 new customers per quarter. And as you can see by that stat there at the bottom of the screen, the numbers don't lie. In almost 50% of our customer base, there are threats or ongoing issues from a vulnerability perspective that include a cloud component. And those are numbers that bear across the entire industry. It's not just Arctic Wolf customer base. But at the end of the day, we look at things a little bit differently from a security perspective than we did back in the 90s and the 2000s and even yesterday for that matter, because security is an ongoing and evolving requirement. But at the same time, business requirements are ongoing and evolving as well. So as we evaluate new infrastructure, pieces and parts, things like storage and networking and firewalls and all the rest of that stuff, and think about the new features and the new flexibilities and the new extensions that those provide for a business, we have to also assume that security itself is also an evolving aspect of that. And the cloud is a very, very good representation of that ongoing security evolution because of the fact that it's changed the dynamic a bit, but it really hasn't changed the overall surface from a visibility side. Where that surface exists is certainly changing, but the fact that you have to evaluate and maintain and monitor those surfaces has not changed.
Right. And I think you said it right. There certainly can't be assumptions made in this transition. If you move your infrastructure up to Amazon Web Services, just to put it in one of their S3 buckets doesn't make it secure. You have to evaluate the security of that bucket. You have to make sure that it is properly positioned to protect your information as it resides in their services. And that's something that it's just not done automatically. You have to make sure that those are done. There are certain things, like you said, that are not enabled by default. You have to turn on certain logins to be aware of what's happening. And if there's something that is doing something malicious in the cloud, some sort of unauthorized cloud access or something like that, you need to have eyes on that. That's kind of like a shadow IT awareness program that will bring that information to you that something malicious is happening in it. You've heard of probably form jacking and the effort of somebody getting in and stealing form data out of cloud or out of web applications. That type of awareness needs to be brought to you. If you're going to make this jump into the cloud, and I think it's a right move, just make sure that the securities are positioned there to provide you the information that you need to understand for it to operate normally and effectively for you.
Yeah, and finally, the thing that I would bring to the table that really hits home, I think, for most customers and most folks evaluating any kind of aspect with respect to implementation in the IT world is that, there's standards and controls that we implement across all of our different implementations. We do so even in our accounting departments and finance and manufacturing floors and things of that nature. So when we start building these standards and controls, they need to be monitored, they need to be enforced, and they need to be maintained. And when we do that and we think about that in an overall architectural deployment with respect to IT, whether that's on-prem, remote for our remote users, as well as our cloud implementations, some of the most critical parts of having a good ongoing security posture is maintaining those standards and understanding that they're implemented correctly every single time and without fail. Because as we react, just like we do in our internal ID departments, when somebody says, hey, I need this new application installed, most of the time we don't get the luxury of evaluating whether that's the right application or whether there's other options that will be more secure or more performant or whatever it is. We're just basically, as an IT organization, told to get it done. I'm sure everyone would agree with that. So when we think about that in the context of security, though, we need to bring that security thought process to the front of our minds instead of it being what we do after we've done those deployments. So I think the ongoing trend and the talk track through this entire coffee break series has been really beneficial because we kind of link everything together with respect to that talk track of security is something that goes across the entire infrastructure, whether it's from a proactive or a reactive approach with the managed detection and response or managed risk, but more importantly, the active component, which is keeping the eyes on glass, keeping those professionals looking at the things that need to be looked at, staying educated on what's available and what you need to look for and what you need to be aware of, and then finally, making all of that put together in a way that doesn't drain the resources and the talent pool that you already have in your IT department.
I love the idea of keeping the eyes on the glass, and I want it to be a single pane of glass. I want to go one place to get my understanding about my on-prem, about my risk, and about my cloud solutions, and that's important.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Scott. Now we'd like to flip it over and open it up for questions. So if you haven't done so already, but you have some questions, whether or not it's on managed cloud monitoring or any of the 4 topics that we talked about in these coffee breaks, please submit those questions in the bottom right hand of your screen. And while you're doing that, as we have on each one, we want to give you the opportunity to continue the conversation with us. So I'm going to throw up another polling question, and if you have interest in continuing the conversation, please fill that out on your screen. While we jump over, let's see, the first question: if I move part or all of my infrastructure software to the cloud, isn't it the cloud provider's responsibility to provide security? Tim, you want to take that one?
Yeah, we actually talked a little bit about that before, but at the end of the day, they certainly are securing their side of it. They're making sure that they're following standards and they're doing the very best from both an implementation as well as an ongoing monitoring side of the coin. But because of the versatility and the overall speed that most of their customer base requires, a lot of the integrated security with those tools is still the responsibility of the end user or the customer to both implement, maintain, and monitor. So it is still the customer's responsibility.
So here we go down that assumption path again, right? Don't make assumptions that security is present. Don't make assumptions that backup of your data is present. Make sure that you know that exactly what is being included with their offerings and their deliverables as you move or transition to the cloud, and make sure that it's at the security level that is necessary for your compliance levels.
Yep, that's right. All right, second question. How can a hacker actually harm a business when everything is outside of the normal 4 walls? Tim, you want that one too?
Sure. That's an interesting one. As we said earlier about 50% of the customer base with Arctic Wolf has some kind of cloud component. I think that the easy part of that to understand is the visibility side of the coin. Hackers are certainly looking for the easiest way to gain access to, whether it's information or just accounts and things of that nature. So they know that if you're implementing something new on Office 365 or Amazon or Azure or something like that, when they see new customers get deployed up there, and trust me, they are monitoring for that, they assume that there's going to be things that those customers haven't implemented yet, and they target them. And if they see some kind of a vulnerability in the cloud implementation of that particular business or organization, the next target's going to be the on-prem stuff. So it is very, very relevant to understand that security needs to be the forefront of those cloud type implementations, because it can kind of be a little red flag that the hackers are now coming for the rest of your business.
Yeah, and I love it that you said target, because when you have an on-prem Exchange solution, you have a very small target for the attackers. They have to be basically attacking you directly. When you pick that up and you move it up into the cloud, you put it maybe in Office 365 platform, now you're in a very large target. And there are script kiddies out there that are actually looking for new domains that join that pool and go right after the users within that and trying to trick them into doing something malicious, like providing their credentials to a fake Office 365 login page. So you have to be very strategic and secure about that.
Yeah, I think when we were talking yesterday, Sam, we talked about specialized hackers and how there are different hackers for different things, and made me
Mhm.
think of specialized doctors, where you have different doctors for different things. Okay, last question it looks like, unless another one comes in between now and then. What is the benefit of monitoring the cloud? Does it benefit the on-premise security as well? Scott, you
Hmm.
want that one?
I will take that one. That is interesting question because there is a separation of duty there with what happens on-prem and what happens up in the cloud. So you need to have eyes on the glass, as Tim stated, for both of them. But what I have normally seen in most of the assistance that I've had with companies securing the cloud is that we identify certain security parameters that were not secure in the on-prem solution. We made it tight up in the cloud, but when we started looking at some of the controls that we were implementing, we realized that those securities were not defined and not as protected in the cloud. So I think there's a nice transition process of learning on both sides. And as you secure one side, the other side becomes secure as well.
Agree 100%.
Wonderful. Well, if you all have any other questions on any of the coffee break topics, manage detection and response, manage risk, manage cloud monitoring, or just your overall IT security operational approach, please do not hesitate to reach out to NetGain using the contact information on your screen. Tim, Scott, thank you so much. Is there anything that you would like to add as we kind of wrap this entire series here? Tim, I'll start with you.
I just want to say thanks. I think this is a great idea. Hopefully it was valuable to the folks that joined. We're looking forward to speaking with each and every one of you and answering any additional questions, anything specific about your implementation. We're happy to answer questions. So feel free to reach out, and hope everybody has a great rest of their day.
Scott, anything that you would like to add?
Megan, I'm the director of security for NetGain. I love security. I love talking about security. I'm so excited that we've had the attendance that we've had over these coffee breaks. The information, I hope, was beneficial for everyone that enjoyed those deliverables. And thank you once again for attending, and just love being here. Thank you.
Perfect. And thank you all for your expertise. And thank you everybody for attending our coffee break sessions on IT security. Please enjoy the rest of your day.